Roy Pulver used to be a soldier in the Delta Force, and he is now trapped in a situation where he keeps reliving the same day over and over again. This means that every time he dies, the day resets itself, and he has to relive it again. He has been through this day so many times that he knows exactly what is going to happen at every moment. Every morning at 7 a.m., a man breaks into his apartment and tries to kill Roy and the woman he slept with. Then a helicopter appears outside his window and shoots at his apartment until it explodes. But Roy has learned the pattern of the day by heart, and he knows exactly how to avoid being killed. He jumps out of the window and lands on a truck filled with sand. After that, Roy steals a car and tries to escape from two assassins in a minivan who are chasing him and shooting at him. He calls them Pam and Esmeralda because he doesn't know their real names. Roy knows how to escape from them as long as he doesn't get distracted and remembers to dodge a certain bus, which he has failed to do in the past. Every day, Roy's life starts over again from the beginning. However, there are small changes each time, depending on what Roy does or forgets to do. In addition to dealing with the man in his apartment, a helicopter, and Pam, there are also other killers that he must evade. These include Guan Yen, who uses a sword to kill him, Kaboom, who plants bombs on him, and the German twins, and a man who looks like him, who he calls Roy number 2. Sometimes Roy manages to kill some of them, but in the end, he always ends up being killed himself. I bet Roy wishes he could hit the snooze button and avoid starting over each day. Roy believes that his ex-wife has the answers to his problems, but when he calls her office, he finds out that she has died in an accident. However, Roy thinks he may have actually killed her. Unfortunately, he never lives long enough to find out the truth. On the days when Roy manages to avoid the killers and reach Jake's diner, he must hurry to get a seat at the bar. Otherwise, he may lose out to Dai Feng, a world champion swordmaster who Jake has a crush on. Roy got really drunk at a diner while listening to Dave talk about security and conspiracy theories. Sadly, assassins always come at 12:47 and kill him there. If he doesn't go to the diner, they will find him and kill him earlier. He has tried different routes before, but the assassins always manage to shoot him. Roy remembers the day before the time jump started when he visited his ex-wife Gemma at her work. She asked him to come because her company was hiring, but she seemed more interested in taking his measurements and hair sample. Roy asked Gemma about a strange machine she was working on that could destroy everything if used incorrectly. He also brought up their son, who doesn't know Roy as his father. Roy believes that he's just seen as a friend of the family who's begging for attention. He talks to Gemma and says he can accept that he lost her when he prioritized work over their relationship, but he wants to be a part of his son's life. While they're talking, Brett interrupts them and reminds Gemma that they're in a restricted area. Gemma says she has a special agreement, but when Roy tries to give Brett his resume, Brett says they're not hiring. This means that Gemma lied to Roy when she said she could help him before he leaves. Gemma tells Roy she sent him a birthday present that's very important for him to open, and she asks him to remember a guy named Cyrus. Meanwhile, Venter is not happy that Roy has learned about his experiments. He orders Brett to handle Roy by hiring non-trained people instead of soldiers so that no one can trace it back to them. Venter then scolds Gemma for breaking security protocols by inviting Roy over. At night, Roy goes to a bar and meets a woman named Alice who works as a dental hygienist. This woman is just one of many that Roy has been with in the past. The bartender tells Roy that he won't find happiness with these brief relationships because he still thinks about his ex-wife. He gets a call from Gemma who sounds upset and needs his help, but the call gets disconnected before she can explain. Instead of trying to reach her again, Roy chooses to go back to his place with Alice. While Roy is having fun with Alice, Gemma takes some of Roy's hair and blood and puts them in a machine she's been working on. Venter sees this on security cameras and decides that Gemma has gone rogue. This was the last normal day that Roy had before the loop started. After thinking about his conversation with Gemma, Roy realizes he never checked the birthday present she sent him. He opens the package and finds a book called Issa and Isaias, with a note from Gemma on the back cover that says, "Time waits for no man." Roy was so engrossed in reading a book that he forgot to take the necessary steps to avoid getting killed by assassins. It's a classic case of getting lost in a book, but hopefully, he'll learn to bookmark his reading time and prioritize his safety next time. He died a few times, but eventually managed to escape with the book. He found a button in the car he was hijacking, which made the car go faster and caused him to miss the exit to Jake's diner. Instead, he ended up at an underground mall in Atlanta, where he started reading the book. He saw his son Joe in the mall and followed him to an arcade where they held esports tournaments. Whenever Roy walked near a screen, it glitched, but he didn't realize it. Roy scolded Joe for skipping school and asked him what he had bought, but it turned out to be just some cards and nothing illegal. Roy then invited Joe to lunch, and as soon as they left the building, Roy realized that he had been alive for longer than ever before since the time loop started. Roy realizes that someone has put a tracking device on him, and the diner's metal walls and the mall's underground location have protected him from the assassins who are after him. Sadly, the assassins catch up to him and shoot him while he tries to save his son's life. The next day, Roy talks to the man who broke into his apartment, hoping to learn where the tracker is, but the man won't tell him. Roy checks himself thoroughly in the bathroom at the diner, but still can't find the tracker. He then asks his friend Dave for help, who suggests that the tracker might be in Roy's teeth. Roy remembers the dental hygienist, who had drugged him in the dentist's chair, and he realizes that she put the tracker in his tooth. Roy removes the tooth with the tracker but is killed by his doppelganger, who is also trying to find the tracker. The next day, Roy confronts Alice, who admits that she was paid by Brett to put the tracker in Roy's tooth. Roy then sets a trap with the tracker to catch his enemies, and continues his routine until he reaches Jake's diner, where he removes the tooth with the tracker. Roy's plan to track down Pam works, but she refuses to reveal who hired her. He ends up killing her with her own gun, which used to belong to a dictator. Roy believes that Gemma has put him in this situation for a reason, but he can't go back far enough, making everything feel pointless. All he has left now is revenge. After he killed all the assassins, he uses a phone he stole from Coburn to call Brett and make a promise to find him. Roy drives to the laboratories and attempts to smash the door open with his car, but he only ends up crashing and getting shot by Brett. Roy goes through several loops, trying various plans to sneak into the laboratories. He tries sending his car with bombs and pretending to be Roy number 2. Stealing his ID allows him to get inside, but it takes him a few tries to figure out how to avoid the guards and security cameras. Eventually, Roy finds a way to sneak some weapons with him, and the guards are no longer a problem. However, he encounters someone whose sword-fighting skills are too good for him to stop with just his bare hands or weapons. Sometimes Roy doesn't die quickly enough from his sword wounds, and Vender finds him before he can reset, giving the same long speech before killing him. During one of his speeches, Roy discovers that the project he is trapped in is called the Osiris Spindle. He realizes that Vender is unaware that it is still functioning, and that Gemma put him there on purpose to become Osiris and stop Vender's plan. Roy develops a new plan and starts a new series of loops. He goes through his usual routine until he removes the tracker in the diner's bathroom, and then asks Defang for sword lessons. After a good amount of training, he becomes skilled enough to defeat her. He then goes back and fights Bunyan with a sword, easily defeating her and killing Brett and Vender. During the fight, Vender hints that Joe may be in danger, which angers Roy, and after killing Vender, he rushes to the mall, where he finds out that his son has already died many times in the loops he has been through. Roy learns that Gemma put him in the Osiris Spindle to stop Vender's plan and is devastated to realize that his efforts were meaningless. While struggling with the police, Roy can't get close enough to see Joe's body. Suddenly, a bright light appears on the horizon, which Roy remembers Gemma warning him about as the end of the world. Roy realizes Gemma must be dead because he didn't answer her calls for help, and now their son is involved. Feeling like there's no point in doing anything if the world is going to end, Roy becomes apathetic and lets the assassins kill him repeatedly. But one day, the violence shocks him out of his apathy, and he decides to make the most of the time he has left. He spends his loops with Joe, playing video games and having lunch. Roy wants to tell Joe that he's his father, but he's too scared. During one loop, Joe reveals that Gemma had contacted him that morning, which surprises Roy because he thought she was killed the previous night. Determined to save Gemma, Roy sneaks into the labs and shoots 2 people while demanding answers. He learns that Gemma had sabotaged the Osiris Spindle, causing a chain reaction they couldn't control. Now, Roy has a new plan to try and save her. While examining the security cameras, Roy discovers the exact time of Gemma's death, which was 14 minutes after he woke up. He shoots himself to reset the day and decides to attempt to save Gemma, even though he only has 14 minutes to do so. He proceeds to kill every guard he encounters on his way to Gemma's laboratory, where he finds her being attacked by Brett. Without hesitation, Roy kills both Brett and Vender before reuniting with Gemma. Roy reveals everything he has discovered about Joe to Gemma while promising her that Joe is safe and no assassins are after him. Gemma informs Roy that she cannot stop the spindle, only restart it. Thus, if Roy enters the spindle, the day should reset for the final time. If time resumes and Roy dies, he will be gone forever. Nevertheless, Roy believes that he has learned enough information to rescue both Gemma and Joe without difficulty. After kissing Gemma goodbye, Roy enters the Osiris Spindle and awaits to restart the day for the last time. If you want to see how this cyber woman is the future's lethal weapon, then click on this video. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to watch more videos like this.